I'd like to welcome everybody to the Community Development Committee meeting on Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. I'll first take roll. In the room with me is Councilman Cyril Jefferson. On remotely, I think we have Councilman Hudson. Can you hear us? Councilman Hudson, can you hear us?
Says he's talking, but there's no sound.
Yeah. All right. We're working through some technicals. We can see that you're talking to us, Councilman Hudson, so I'm going to take that as a yes. And I got your text here also. And we possibly could have Councilman Johnson sign in a little later. I'm Councilman Chris Williams, and we will go ahead and get started. The first up will be an update on the homeless service Guilford County Continuum of Care. I will turn the floor over to Dr. Palmer and welcome her in. If everyone listening out there can bear with us, we're working through a little sound glitch here.
I don't think they can.
Okay, I just heard someone. So Dr. Palmer, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Mm-hmm.
All right, good deal. Thank you. We're turning the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you for the invitation to be a part of the Community Development Committee meeting this month. I have along with me Brian Hahn, who is the Executive Director of Partners Ending Homelessness, and Partners Ending Homelessness is the manager of our collaborative applicant component of the COC. We also have Sherry Neal. Sherry is the COC Community Program Manager, housed with Guilford County, and is a part of the Department of Health and Human Services, of which Heather Skeens is the director. And so they are both on the call with me today, or attending the meeting today. One of the things that I did want to highlight for this particular update is that we recently had a called meeting of the COC board where we elected our next year's slate of officers. And so the chair of the Continuum of Care for Guilford County next year is me, Pamela Palmer. Our chair-elect is Bernita Sims. She's the Executive Director of Welfare Reform Liaison Project. And our secretary is Beth Waters. We also have committee chairs. I won't go through all of those, but I would like to point out that our system performance and evaluation committee chair is the Nina Wilkes, who is with the City of High Point, as you know. And of course, we have our past chair-elect role. I've talked about the collaborative applicant, and also our coordinated entry committee chair is Shanna Reese. She's the executive director of the Servant Center in Greensboro. And as you know, they have programming in both Greensboro and High Point. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that we do have our new slate of officers for next year, and we're glad that we were able to achieve that before July 1st. The other thing I did want to report, we've shared this before, that every Friday we meet for our Stronger Together Task Force meeting, and that group of individuals focus on maintaining a collaborative continuum of care network. And one of our presenters, or I would say individuals from our community, brought to us an update on the City of High Point's work towards a day center, and that was Mike McNair. He shared with us in our last meeting just some highlights of that work. And so we just want to say today that, you know, we are listening and open to being a part of that work. And we are just awaiting to continue to be informed about how that is going and the work that you all are doing by way of the city to pursue a day center there in High Point. That's it for me in terms of my update. I'm gonna pass it on to Brian, and then he will let Sherry share some updates from the county.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Palmer, and it's great having Sherry on as well as Heather Skeens from Guilford County. They'll give an update in just a minute, but it's a real team effort on what we're doing, and so it's a privilege for me to work closely with the COC and Dr. Palmer and the leadership. I just have a few things to share. One is just a brief update on our COVID response. We continue to operate in partnership with Guilford County Public Health, the county hotel, where we test, isolate, or quarantine if needed folks entering into shelter or who are in shelter presenting COVID symptoms. We've moved nearly 1,200 clients safely into shelter in the last 17 months and kept our COVID positive rate at about 8%. The good news is the need of that hotel is beginning to shrink. We're hoping this summer to really pare back that operation and move, as we say, from crisis response into recovery. So we're really trying to shift our narrative and our posture as a network, as a COC, into recovery, and we'll be talking more about that in the coming weeks and months. On that front, in particular, we're engaged with all our shelters as they begin to move into whatever normal looks like in this, it's hard for me to say post-pandemic, but present pandemic reality. And so we're in dialogue with our shelters, public health, COC leadership, as we begin to, again, try to focus on housing and diversion and not just shelter placement. So that's an important conversation that's happening. And again, your city leadership's very engaged with that. The last thing I'll say, and this is sort of a segue to county, to Sherry and Heather, is that, again, they have been engaged as the new collaborative applicant officially. In HUD's perspective, we, PH, remain the administrative agent to make sure we don't miss any deadlines or registrations or important details that need to get submitted to HUD. Excuse me. But Sherry and Heather have been really engaged. We've been having weekly TA, as we learn the roles and responsibilities. And I'm even Sherry, and I mean, she might want to talk about this, about the crisis response team that's in the process of being formed as we continue to respond to issues and challenges in our community. So thanks again for having us. Really appreciate the partnership. And so Sherry, I'll turn it over to you or to Heather.
Well, and actually, this is Heather. I'm going to say just a couple minutes and then let Sherry go into some of those things that Brian talked about. Sherry has jumped in and just really made a presence in our community with collaborative efforts to really work on this issue. As part of our emergency rental assistance program, we have gotten ERA1, what we call ERA1, ERA2 funds, and now we're getting an additional ERA1 funds of 20 million. So the county has received just close to 40 million in ERA1 funds, and we are looking at doing some expanding some mediation and legal aid services through UNCG, through Dr. Sills, in order to begin to address some of these issues. We're also looking at ways to expand housing opportunities for this population through some of our ARA or AR American Rescue Funds. And so Sherry is working on opportunities and availability of what we could do with some of those additional funds the county has received. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sherry. If Sherry, you just want to talk about that crisis response team and anything other that you feel is relevant.
Yeah, so thank you all again for having me and having us all here. Again, I'm Sherry Neal, and I'm Continual Care Program Manager. And yes, of course, we are looking at starting to start what we call a crisis response team. We want one in Greensboro and one in High Point, and definitely want to make sure that we're engaging the agencies that need to be engaged in High Point, and of course, the city needs to be there at the table as well. One is that as things come up, because we know this is going to happen again, that we have a little more organized response to these crises that arise. That really doesn't fall into any one person's area, but we just collectively as a community need to work together to develop some type of plan. So I am currently taking the lead on that. And along with Brian has already filled you in with some of the other things that we're already doing here and working with our TAs, and just sent off the updates for the Nofo, because they've changed the name. So just looking for moving forward with that. And so we'll be working on that and working closely with trying to gather all the necessary information needed to present that information.
Thank you.
And if I could just say, Chairman Williams, thank you again for the space on your agenda to give us an opportunity to give an update directly to council and to the city of High Point. So we continue to embrace this opportunity and just want to continue to express our appreciation. Thank you.
All right, no, thank you, Dr. Palmer. You and your, with Brian and Heather and Sherry and all your other partners, that the service you provide for our community is essential. So thank you for continuing your work, and always invited to come back to keep us updated on how we can work with you. So thank you again. Next up is a presentation for a community ready project. With this one, I'll turn the floor over to Dr. Patrick Harmon and Mary Sizemore.
I believe that's a typo. It's supposed to be community read, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Read, yeah. It says ready. I'm reading it as, but read, gotcha. Thank you.
I'll just talk to you. Okay. All right, thanks so much, Councilman Williams. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about the community read that's going to be coming up later on this summer. So this is an idea I brought to Mary Sizemore back in January of 2020 when we naively thought there wouldn't be a pandemic for the past year and a half. Because I've been concerned a long time about our empathy deficit here in America, and that if we don't sort of learn to develop some empathy in ourselves and with our neighbors and with our policies and with our budget, that's a bleak future, frankly, for America. And so I ran across this book called Trust First as a Christmas present for one of my AmeriCorps Vistas. It really struck me because it's the tale of what Bruce Deal did in Atlanta, dealing with folks who are experiencing homelessness. And he developed an organization called City of Refuge, and it's really based on trusting people first, even when they may violate that trust continually, but you can really make an impact if you start to trust each other. And they've served like 20,000 people and got them into self-sufficiency and away from homelessness. Very impactful organization, and I thought it would be worthwhile having this discussion in High Point about what could happen in High Point if we all had radical trust with each other, that we were looking out for our better angels. And so that's kind of the impetus for the book. And so there's several partners with Community Read, of course, the library and the Hayden Harmon Foundation, and also Resilience High Point, who's been doing a lot of work in sort of community building as well. And so the kickoff is July 24th at the Farmers Market at 10 o'clock. Kind of introduce the concept. The library's been able to buy a bunch of copies to hand out to folks, and we have some Trust First bingo cards that the library staff's developing, and then some business cards, conversation starters with folks in the community, so if they're interacting with a stranger, they can have some tools at hand to sort of start to have conversations in town. And then there's a community leader panel is going to be happening at the end of August, and then the author is going to come to do a keynote on September 14th at the High Point Museum in the evening. What's going to happen during that day is that Resilience High Point's been working on what we're calling a compassion charter. They're wanting individuals and organizations to sign this will elevate opportunities for collaboration and action, putting empathy in action is compassion. And then we'll be introducing that concept on September 14th and try to get the community engaged on next steps, because we want to have not just to read and have a chat and all go home. We want to have a read, a chat, and continue the conversation and get people engaged in what's going on in the city of High Point, really amp up our civic engagement. That's kind of the goal of the book, to generate conversation. So it'll be ongoing, and things will be happening throughout the fall as well. And thanks to Ryan Ferguson, we're going to have information about the community read in this coming month's utility bill. And then Mary has provided a copy to all city council members and city manager as well. And so I really want to encourage city council to read the book, engage with it, encourage other folks to read the book and participate in all these activities, and really provide leadership for this community read, because I think it's a moment as we come out of COVID to really have a positive impact on our community with getting to know our neighbors and trusting our neighbors. So that's kind of what the community read is about, and so hopefully you guys will participate in a lot of these activities. Just want to let you guys know about it.
Thank you, Patrick. So I'm going to take you, Mary. You didn't want to say anything?
I really do encourage you all to read the book. It's a short book. It doesn't take long, and it's a compelling read. So, I've been involved with a number of community reads over my long library career, and this is really different from any other because it's all about such a nebulous. It's about trust, and how do you have programs about that? So I think the library staff and Patrick, we've come up with maybe some interesting ways to get people to think about trust and how it can be a radical changer for our community. And the city is so involved, it's made so many steps, and I know that you're very interested in inclusion and bringing everybody up and bringing everybody along. And and this story is just all about that. So anyway, the library, we have 500 copies, so please help us get them out in the community. We'll be giving them to the Mike's Commission. We already brought copies for that. So if you have a group that you would like to share it with, please let us know. We'll get it to you, get discussion questions. So thank you for your support.
Absolutely. Thank you. Is there any member of the committee have any questions for either our speakers?
Yeah, this is Councilman Jefferson. I heard someone mention, Patrick, you'll be doing a read aloud of this nightly for those who want to listen in, as maybe as some
I
nighttime
think
reading, just
that's
as people fall
an
asleep.
unfounded rumor, Councilman Jefferson, but
Okay. I wasn't sure. I know you've got one of those voices people can fall asleep to. So.
that's true. But if anybody wants me to come speak to the group about the book, I'd be more than happy to do it, and hopefully keep them awake, so yeah. But
No, I'm excited, honestly, though, about this, and appreciate not only Dr. Patrick Harmon, but also Director Sizemore, you and your team getting behind this and making it a real collaborative effort to move our community forward, make it compassionate, and ultimately become the best High Point that we can be. Thank y'all.
all right, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you both.
This is Councilmember Hudson. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Hey, hallelujah. Can you tell me where I can get copies of the book? And I'm assuming at the library.
I think I'm looking at a copy of your copy.
Yeah, there'll be one in your box, Councilman Hudson, so.
Okay, thank you. I do have several groups I'd like to share it with. Is that something I can just get in touch with the library and arrange?
Yes, Director Sizemore is pointing to herself, so that says you can reach out to her for extra copies.
Yeah, if you
Happy
want
to
me
do that. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm
Councilman
sorry.
Hudson, if you need somebody to facilitate some of the conversations around the book, you can reach out to me as well.
I've already got my first plan for that. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be calling on you for it for sure.
I definitely will probably reach out to you, Dr. Harmon. We're incorporating an equity and diversity and inclusion committee at our company at International Market Center. So I'll probably definitely be reaching out to you. Thank you very much. All right. Next up is presentation on the update for the CDBG CV3 funding, and I will turn the floor over to Mike McNair.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to spend a little time maybe just doing a little filling in some backstory here because this has been out here for a while. But if you recall that after the CARES Act was passed back in, I believe, March of 2020, the city was notified of an allocation of CDBG CV funds in the amount of $552,706, with the second allocation to follow later. And in order to utilize those funds, Council approved an amendment to the action plan on June 15, 2020, and the funding was ultimately allocated to public services that were designed to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19, and those were primarily mortgage assistance, rental assistance, and utility assistance were the primary uses. In September 2020, the city was notified of the second allocation of CV funding, now called CDBG CV3, in the amount of $588,651. And at the time, since the contracts for the first round had recently been released, staff advised council that we would delay recommending projects for the second allocation to allow us to observe the spend rate for the first allocation and to identify a project that meets needs peculiar to High Point, probably in the area of homeless services. So just to give you, if you recall back then, we were thinking about this where we are today back then. So now we're at a point where we're prepared to ask council to approve an amendment to the action plan to utilize the remaining funds, the $588,651. The amendment proposes to fund a project that will facilitate the development of a homeless day center. And I say facilitate because it in itself will not make it happen. It'll be sort of the first brick, laying the foundation, laying the groundwork. We anticipate using the funds initially to gain site control. There's a couple of sites that are being considered, but we're not there yet. But once we get there, we will use those funds to gain site control and kind of hold on to it because the other funding that the city is going after, the earmarks and all that stuff won't show up until November, December. So we recognize that what we could actually do is get a purchase option, get site control, start our environmental review process, and at the end of that period, when it's time, hopefully by the time the option ends, the other resources will have showed up, and then we'll know what we have to work with. And then we'll be able to determine, I say we, I mean the city, will be able to determine what's the best use of the funds. We could either go towards completing the acquisition, or it could go towards actually upfitting or repairing a building. At this point, we don't know. We're just kind of setting it up. But the day center could, once it's established, it can provide on-site support services, mental health, regular health, doesn't sound right, but social services and things of that nature for the homeless, restrooms, showers, telephones, classes, continuing education, computer internet access. We also envision that the site should accommodate a permanent housing. Could be a tiny house village in a future phase. One of the things that, there are a lot of different parts moving around here, because one of the things that HUD came out and said, they made an additional allocation of home funds, and they said to the cities, we want this to be for permanent housing for the homeless. So it kind of it kind of ties into that. So it's an opportunity actually to not only meet a need that the city has had for a very long time, because we've all had numerous conversations with people saying, why don't we have a day center? And the answer's always been, we don't have the funding. And now I believe that situation is changed. So what we're asking to do, we actually have a copy of the amendment. It's more of the HUD side of things, but this is the budget. It's just 588,651. HUD calls it a public facilities grant, and that's what we would propose to council at the public hearing next week, and we would seek your recommendation today. Any questions for me?
Thank you,
Did
Mike.
I leave anything out?
Are there any questions from the committee?
Chairman Williams, I don't have any questions, but I will go ahead and jump right out there and say that this conversation has been one that for several months now we've been able to be having and trying to figure what's the best for our community, what are the opportunities to support our community, what are the areas in which we can move things forward with an issue that we know that several members and individuals within our community face, and that's the experience of homelessness. And I'm actually really thrilled to say, I know Director McNair has been incredible in all the collaboration that he's provided to some of the community partners that are looking to come along for this effort. And I'm thrilled to say that if this is given a favorable recommendation, obviously today, and it goes before council to be included in the strategic plan, then Open Door Ministries of High Point will actually be joining on as a collaborator in the work of this, to be a part of the planning, the research, the strategizing, to see about making this happen. There's a news release that'll go out hopefully sometime soon with more information about Open Door Ministries' thoughts around this. The board could not be more excited about the city's championing for this effort. As Open Door Ministries has always had a mission to address and support those who are experiencing homelessness. And I'm proud to say that where we are right now, I think is truly a big step that we can take forward. And if I may, forgive me you all for being verbose, if I may, I think there's no better time. As I've often said, High Point is revitalizing itself. And we are creating the economic tide, as we say, that lifts all boats. And I've often said that works as long as we address the boats that have leaks and the boats that are anchored down. And for individuals experiencing homelessness, who deal with the traumatic uncertainty every day of not having stable housing, who have to go from each side of town to get the services requisite for them to succeed and thrive in life, for those who that is their everyday experience, knowing that their city government, their elected officials, their nonprofit organizations, and many other chief collaborators, Dr. Patrick Harmon, I'm proud to say, has been involved in some of that work, and Brian Hahn's been involved in some conversations as well. So I just want to shout them out because they're here as well. I'm proud to say that as we revitalize, that we're ensuring, again, that all folks will rise with the economic tide. So I'm really hoping this goes forth, and I'm happy to actually make the motion for us to, I'm assuming we need to approve this amendment or this to go to council.
Yes,
or if
but
we've
I
already
did
done
want
that.
to add a couple of dots. Questions that weren't asked, I'm going to go ahead and answer. The city, long-term, would not be the owner of this project. We would not operate it. The intent is to do the heavy lifting, so to speak, to get the homeless provider community to take it from there. And as Cyril mentioned, there are other agencies out there that also have expertise that can make this whole thing a better thing, because there's a lot of different activities that can occur on that site, and it may take, probably everybody would benefit from the wisdom of other agencies to make it work right. But yes, we would we have to be mindful of the fact, and Cyril, it's kind of funny that you made that comment about rising boats, because I've been thinking about that, rising tides. The thing we have to be mindful of is that, yeah, we'll lift all boats, but small boats aren't at sea where there's big boats. So we have to,
Oh, yeah.
we have to be mindful.
Mike, I'm gonna start saying that. I'm gonna start saying that. I'll give you credit though when I say it.
So having said that, yes, we would ask that you recommend approval to council.
Wanted to give the opportunity for Councilman Hudson, if he had any questions or statements before we move into the taking of the motion, and if there are any other members of council listening in. I can't hear you again, Councilman Hudson. Are you good? Want to take that? We can come back to him. So I'm going to accept that as a motion. You said you didn't need to add, he didn't need to add anything else to that motion.
Did you need me to add something else to further clarify? Yeah, so I'm making the motion that we approve what was presented today by Director McNair, which I believe came in the form of an amendment. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm making the motion that we approve that.
Okay. Okay. It looks like we've lost Councilman Hudson online. I'm going to see if. You just give us a moment. While we're looking into that point, let's see, we got the city attorney online. Joanne, do we have to have that quorum to make this motion? Can you hear us?
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute there. Yeah, you actually do need a quorum in order to take a vote on anything. Did Wesley just drop off?
I think we lost him, yes. I think we did just lost. We're reaching out to other members also.
If Wesley could still hear us, Councilmember Hudson, if you could perhaps call on someone's cell phone, that would work as well.
While we wait on that, thank you, Joanne. While we wait on that, I guess I can ask a couple of questions. And I see Dr. Palmer is online. I'm going to jump here a little bit, y'all. Dr. Palmer, I do got a question. When we was talking about you moving people into hotels for safety, just wanted to know, did that cost with the local, we had a furniture market locally, and I got basically some complaints to some community providers that were helping people to, in other fields that were helping people to find shelter for a while. They got complaints that local hotels were raising their prices, even with these individuals under this type of situations. Did that happen with y'all too?
I'm going to defer to Sherry. She was on the ground with that, and I don't know if Brian has a comment about it. I can't speak to exactly how the bill was paid. I was called over the weekend, though, when the bill wasn't paid to find some ways to do that, but I didn't see it through. I'll defer to those two as far as who actually, I just made some phone calls.
Are you referring to the individuals that were evicted and the hotels?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, yes, the county, for most of the, for about 80% of the bill paid for, and then there was another partner agency that also provided financial assistance. And so, what they were saying is that they were kind of making comments in regards to that, okay, they could help us out for a certain limited time, but pretty much their prices were going to be increasing because the market was coming about. But Wednesday of last week was the last day that the county had paid. So I know there were other individuals that were having to move, and we were kind of trying to redistribute workloads and who was going where, whether they were going to another hotel or they were going to shelter between Greensboro and High Point. So there was a lot of variations of that, but I know another community agency that's a part of the COC also paid for some additional people to stay. But we tried to make sure that everyone had some type of housing, even though some were still displaced at the time. And I was there on the day of basically discharge. It was, and I was I'm still getting calls now, still trying to help. We are also trying to help assisting the clients through our EURA process to just try to help them find housing. I have one gentleman now, he ended up sleeping out in his car last night because he was sleeping with a family member just temporarily, and I'm still trying to help him get housing. And so it was a lot going on, and it was just kind of an unfortunate situation.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Palmer and Brian, I'll probably revisit this question going forward. We got another show coming, trade show coming up in High Point in October, so it's going to be definitely a little colder, so I want to definitely maybe revisit this if that becomes an issue down the line. We got Councilman Hudson back online, so I want to go ahead and move forward with this vote on this recommendation. The motion was made by Councilman Jefferson. I guess I take Councilman Hudson, do you second it?
I will second it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, then yes, I'll second that.
All right. Is there any other discussion on this matter? If not, then I guess I'll go ahead and take the roll. Councilman Hudson? How do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jefferson? Aye. And I vote aye. Chris Williams, that motion passes and moves with a positive recommendation to council. I do want to thank everyone for their efforts in this, and I will say that we have been having discussions on day centers since day one for me at 2014. It's been that long. It's been well overdue, and I'm grateful for all the efforts that everyone's putting into making this possible. So that was the last item on the agenda. Is there any other business before we close? All right, is there anyone that objects to adjourning? All right, I want to thank everybody, and we'll see you next time.